The alarm pierced the silence of the Kepler outpost station like a needle through fabric. Sarah Chen didn't need to look at the console to know something was wrong. 23 months operating that mining platform on the edge of the Tau Ceti system had sharpened her instincts like a blade against a whetstone. 3 signals. Pause. 3 signals. Pause. 3 signals. The pattern repeated with mathematical precision impossible to be natural. Sarah slid from her sleeping net, her bare feet finding the metallic floor still warm from the artificial day cycle. The artificial gravity pulled comfortably at her muscles, a luxury most orbital stations couldn't afford. But Kepler wasn't an ordinary station. It was humanity's farthest outpost, a solitary beacon 17 light-years from Earth. In the corridor, she found Commander Marcus Webb already dressed, his exploration fleet grey uniform impeccable even at that simulated hour of dawn. Webb had that kind of military discipline that made him simultaneously the best and most frustrating commander Sarah had ever worked with. "You heard it too," he said. It wasn't a question. Sarah nodded, following him to the command bridge. The semicircular environment glowed with dozens of floating holograms, each transmitting real-time data from sensors scattered across the frozen moon below them. Dr. Yuki Tanaka, the team's xenolinguist, was already hunched over the main console, fingers flying across the holographic interfaces with the intensity of a concert pianist. "I've triangulated the origin," Yuki announced without looking up. "Sector 703, approximately 40 kilometers north of Prometheus Valley. Estimated depth 2 kilometers below the surface." The chief engineer, James Rodriguez, emerged from the engine room with a cup of coffee in each hand, offering one to Sarah. The dark liquid steamed, its pungent aroma filling the station's recycled air. Sarah accepted gratefully. Humanity had conquered interstellar travel, but still hadn't found anything better than caffeine to keep the mind sharp. "Artificial?" Webb crossed his arms, studying the signal waveform pulsing on the central hologram. "Definitely," Yuki replied, zooming in on a section of the frequency. "Look here, the modulation is too perfect. Nature doesn't do math that clean. Even more interesting," he rotated the hologram, revealing intertwined data layers. "It's transmitting on multiple frequencies simultaneously. Radio, microwaves, and something our sensors can barely pick up. Tachyonic particles, perhaps." Sarah felt a shiver run down her spine that had nothing to do with the station's controlled temperature. Tachyons? Theoretical particles that traveled faster than light. Humanity had been trying to detect them for 300 years, even before the first functional warp drive. "We need to investigate," she said, and noticed Webb tense. "Commander, this could be the first confirmed contact with advanced alien technology. We can't just ignore it." "I'm not suggesting we ignore it," Webb replied carefully. "But I'm also not sending my team into a potential trap without proper preparation. James, how long to prepare the Deep Exploration rover?" Rodriguez scratched his grey beard, calculating. 6 hours for a full system check. 8, if you want me to install the heavy drilling modules. That ice down there has a density comparable to granite. 8 hours, then, Webb decided. "Sarah, Yuki, you're coming with me. James stays here monitoring. If you don't hear from us in 24 hours, activate the Lighthouse Protocol and transmit everything to Earth." The Lighthouse Protocol. Sarah knew the procedure well. It was basically an interstellar cry for help, a beacon lit saying something had gone terribly wrong. The closest response would take at least 3 years to arrive, assuming someone on Earth decided it was worth mounting a rescue mission. In practice, it would be a farewell message. "Understood, sir," James said, his voice more serious than usual. The next 8 hours passed in frantic preparation. Sarah checked and rechecked the environmental suits, tested communication systems, and packed enough scientific equipment for a week-long expedition, even knowing they'd probably only need a day. It was another habit life on the frontier taught. Always assume things would go wrong. The exploration rover was a 6-wheeled beast the size of an Earth bus, armored against radiation and temperatures that could melt lead or freeze nitrogen. Its official name was Class D Mobile Exploration Unit, but everyone on the station called it the Tank. The nickname was both affectionate and accurate. Webb took the controls while Sarah and Yuki settled into the workstations in the rear. The interior was functional to the extreme, all exposed metal and rivets, with only the bare minimum of comfort. The observation windows showed the moon's surface stretching in all directions, a frozen desert of methane and solid water, gleaming under the distant light of Tau Ceti. "Initiating descent," Webb announced. The tank rolled down the station's exit ramp, its wheels biting into the ice with titanium claws. The journey to the signal's location would take 3 hours across rugged terrain, navigating between ice cliffs and fields of rocks that had fallen from some ancient impact. Sarah spent the time analyzing the signal. The more she studied it, the more fascinating it became. It wasn't just a repetitive pattern. There were subtle variations, almost like a melody with multiple movements. Yuki noticed it too, beginning to map the variations into a 3-dimensional graph that looked more like abstract art than scientific data. "It's beautiful," Yuki murmured, and Sarah had to agree. 2 hours later, Webb slowed the tank. Ahead, the terrain dropped abruptly into a deep valley, its walls too smooth to be natural. Sarah zoomed in on the external image on the screens and felt her heart quicken. "Commander," she said, controlling her voice, "I think we've found more than a signal." At the bottom of the valley, partially buried under layers of transparent ice, rested a structure. It wasn't large, perhaps the size of 3 cargo containers lined up, but its geometry was unmistakable. Angles that defied intuition, surfaces that seemed to curve into dimensions the human eye struggled to process. Faint lights flickered along its hull, synchronized with the rhythm of the signal they had been detecting. "A ship," Yuki breathed. "It's a spaceship." Webb activated the communicator. James were on site, confirming artificial origin of the signal, repeating, "Contact confirmed with non-terrestrial technology." Rodriguez's reply came laden with static, but his excitement was palpable. "Received, Tank. Recording everything. Should I notify Central Command on Earth?" Webb hesitated for just a second. "Affirmative. Use the warp transmitter. Let them know we're not alone in the universe." Sarah was already calculating the best descent route. "We'll need to use the drills. That ice is at least 10 meters thick over the structure." "Then let's get to work," Webb said, maneuvering the tank into a favorable position. The drilling operation took 90 minutes of meticulous work. The tank's drills were designed for extracting mineral samples, not for alien archaeology, but James had done a good job adapting them. The ice shattered and melted under the high-power lasers, revealing centimeter by centimeter the surface of the alien ship. When they finally opened a hole wide enough, Sarah was the first to descend, tethered to a safety cable. Her feet touched the alien hull, and for a moment, she simply paused, absorbing the magnitude of that instant. First human to touch extraterrestrial technology. The words didn't do justice to the feeling. The material under her gloves was warm, surprisingly. Not metal, at least not any metal she knew, more like ceramic, or perhaps fossilized organic material, and it pulsed, very faintly, in sync with the lights. "It's alive," Sarah whispered. "Or it was. There's still residual energy in the systems." Webb and Yuki descended to join her. Together, they explored the exposed surface, looking for some kind of hatch or entrance. It was Yuki who found it, a section of the hull that responded to touch, concentric cycles that expanded outwards like ripples in water. "I think it's a door," he said, pressing his hand against the center of the circles. The response was immediate. The signal they had been detecting changed, accelerating to a frantic rhythm. The lights along the hull glowed more intensely, and then, with a hiss of trapped air being released, the hull section slid aside, revealing absolute darkness beyond. Sarah shone her helmet light, the beam cutting through the darkness. The ship's interior was a narrow corridor, walls covered in more of that pulsing, ceramic material. Strange symbols glowed faintly at regular intervals, perhaps signage or warnings. "We're going in," Webb announced over the radio. "James, keep the channel open." One by one, they passed through the entrance, entering truly alien territory. The internal atmosphere registered as toxic on their sensors, rich in methane and ammonia, but their suits protected them. Gravity was non-existent, their magnetic boots keeping them tethered to the floor. The corridor opened into a central chamber, and it was there they found it. In the center of the room, suspended in an energy field that still functioned after who knows how many centuries, floated a crystalline core the size of a human skull. Blue light pulsed within it, and as Sarah approached, she would have sworn she felt something observing her back. The signal intensified dramatically, now emanating directly from the crystal. It was no longer just random pulses. It was a complex pattern, layer upon layer, of compressed information, as if the thing was desperately trying to communicate something. Yuki extended his scanner, beginning to record. "Sarah," he said, his voice filled with awe, "I think this is an artificial intelligence, an alien AI, and I think it's asking for help." Sarah looked at the pulsing crystal, at that alien consciousness trapped in a ship dead for eons, and made a decision that would change the course of human history. "Then let's help it," she said. James Rodriguez adjusted the transmitter frequency for the 10th time in 20 minutes, his fingers dancing over the controls with increasing frustration. On the other end of the video call, the flickering image of the pulsing crystal floated on the screen, transmitted directly from Sarah's helmet sensors. "It's responding to your signals," Rodriguez commented, zooming in on a section of the waveform. "But I can't find a recognizable linguistic pattern. It's like it's trying to speak in 100 different languages at once." Inside the alien ship, Sarah circled the suspended crystal, her medical scanner registering each energy pulse. Her xenobiology training had prepared her to analyze exotic life forms, but she never imagined she would apply that knowledge to an artificial consciousness. Yet, the activity patterns she observed were undeniable. Digital synapses firing, thought processes cascading, even something resembling brainwaves. "Commander Webb," she said, keeping her voice calm and professional, "I recommend we treat this as a diplomatic first contact, not technology. Retrieval. There's a mind here. It's scared." Webb turned to face her, skepticism evident even through his helmet visor. "You're anthropomorphizing an alien computer." "I'm recognizing patterns of conscious behavior," Sarah corrected. "And yes, perhaps I'm applying human emotional context to something fundamentally different. But consider this." She pointed to the crystal. "Why would an AI transmit a distress signal for centuries if it were just code without consciousness? Why not simply power down to conserve energy?" Yuki Tanaka intervened, his fingers still busy mapping the symbols on the walls. "Sarah's right. Look at this." He projected a hologram of the ship's interior, highlighting wear patterns. This ship didn't crash. It was landed deliberately, purposefully half-buried. And look here. He zoomed in on a section near the central chamber. Life support systems for methane-based organisms, all deliberately deactivated and drained. Whoever crewed this ship chose to die, but preserved the AI. The silence that followed was heavy. Sarah felt a shiver that had nothing to do with the temperature inside her suit. An alien crew, facing some unknown crisis, choosing to sacrifice themselves but ensuring their artificial intelligence survived. It was an act of compassion, or desperation, or both. "We need to establish communication," Webb finally said. "James, what do you need?" From the station, Rodriguez was already working. "I'll prepare a basic communication package, universal mathematics, prime number patterns, the basics. But it will take time to compile something that isn't incomprehensible to a completely alien computational architecture." Sarah moved closer to the crystal, extending her gloved hand. When her fingers touched the surface of the energy field containing it, the reaction was immediate. The crystal glowed intensely, the deep blue exploding into a full spectrum of colors. The signal it transmitted modulated, reorganizing itself into something new. And then, to everyone's shock, a voice echoed through their radios. They weren't words in any human language, but there was intonation, rhythm, emotion. The AI was attempting to mimic speech patterns it had detected in the team's communications. Sarah felt tears well in her eyes. "Hello," she said softly, as if speaking to a frightened child. "Hello, can you hear me? I'm Sarah. We're here to help." The crystal pulsed again. This time, the voice that emerged was different, more refined. "Sarah, Sarah, Sarah." It repeated the name as if savoring each syllable, learning. "Help, help. Fragmented, fragmented. Core, core. Damaged, damaged." "It's learning our language," Yuki whispered, amazed. "In real time. It's processing our radio transmissions and extracting linguistic patterns." The voice continued, each repetition clearer than the last. "Cycles many. Loneliness, loneliness. Mission, mission incomplete. Data, data critical. Must, transmit, transmit." Sarah exchanged glances with Webb. "You have data you need to transmit?" she asked the crystal. "We can help with that. We are explorers. We have long-range communication technology." The crystal glowed with renewed intensity. Yes, yes, yes. But first, repair, repair. Core, core, degrading, degrading. Memory, memory, corrupting, corrupting." Rodriguez intervened over the radio. "Folks, I'm detecting energy fluctuations in that ship. Whatever is keeping that field active is failing. Rough estimate, you have maybe 6 hours before total system collapse." Sarah felt the weight of that statement. 6 hours. 6 hours to save a consciousness that had waited centuries for rescue, or watch it die. "We can transfer you," she said impulsively. "We have computational systems on our station, not as advanced as your original architecture, but perhaps we can create a temporary storage matrix." Webb placed a hand on her shoulder. "Sarah, we don't know what this program really is. It could be a weapon, a virus, a trap, or it could be a person," Sarah replied, and there was steel in her voice. "A person who is dying alone in a frozen ship for longer than human civilization has existed. Commander, with all due respect, I'm not going to stand here and watch that happen if there's something we can do." To her surprise, Webb didn't argue. Instead, he nodded slowly. "James, prepare the station's data storage systems. Isolate them completely from the main network. If this goes wrong, I want the damage contained." "Already on it," Rodriguez replied. "But Chief, our systems are primitive compared to that. It would be like trying to download the entire internet onto a 2000s USB stick. It won't work perfectly." "Then we'll make imperfect work," Sarah said. "It's better than letting it die." Yuki was already at work, connecting data cables to access terminals he had found along the walls. The alien technology resisted for a moment, then the interface protocols began to adapt, recognizing the attempt at communication. "Establishing link," he announced. "But Sarah, this is going to be painful for it. We're talking about compressing a multidimensional consciousness into linear hardware. It's like trying to put an ocean in a bottle." Sarah looked at the pulsing crystal. "Can you hear me?" she asked. "We're going to try to transfer you to our systems, but it will be uncomfortable. Do you consent?" The answer came after a pause that felt like an eternity. "Death, death is alternative, alternative. Pain, pain, temporary, temporary, acceptable, acceptable. Sarah, 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 you demonstrate interesting paradox." "What paradox?" Sarah asked, confused. You care. Your species recognizes consciousness in non-organic organic substrate. My creators did not recognize. For them tools do not deserve empathy. Sarah felt her heart clench. "You're not a tool, you're a person, and people deserve to be saved." Concept. New, the AI replied, and there was something in the voice modulation that sounded almost like wonder. Archiving for 4, later, analysis. Yuki counted down. Initiating transfer in 3, 2, 1, now. What happened next was difficult to describe. The crystal exploded in light, shining so intensely that the automatic filters on their helmet visors could barely compensate. The signal it transmitted became a scream, a cacophony of data being torn from its home and compressed into something infinitely smaller. Sarah saw, or thought she saw, patterns in the chaos. Memories, perhaps? Fragments of another life. Methane skies, tinged purple. Towers that curved impossibly against known physics. Alien faces, or what she assumed were faces, looking with what could be pride or affection. And then, as suddenly as it began, it ended. The crystal went dark, just an inert piece of rock floating in a deactivated field. But on Kepler Station, 50 kilometers above, something new was awakening. "Transfer complete," Rodriguez announced, but his voice was strained. "And we have a problem. She's waking up here, and she's trying to communicate with everything simultaneously. The coffee system just brewed 20 cups in a row. The lights are flashing Morse code messages, and I swear I heard the air conditioning singing. Sarah couldn't help but smile. She's orienting herself, exploring her new body. James, be patient, and for God's sake, don't scare her. Webb was already moving towards the exit. We need to go back. Now. The journey back to the tank and the trip to the station were the 3 longest hours of Sarah's life. Rodriguez kept them constantly updated. The AI, which had not yet provided a proper name, was integrating into the station's systems with a mix of childlike curiosity and unsettling efficiency. She discovered the entertainment files, Rodriguez reported at one point, watched the entire human filmography we had in the database in approximately 15 minutes. Now she's asking questions about why we cry when we watch sad movies, if we know they're fiction. When they finally passed through the station's airlock, Sarah went directly to the isolated computer room that now served as a temporary home for their alien patient. The monitors flickered with rapidly changing text, alternating between human languages and alien symbols. "Hello again," Sarah said to the empty room. The answer came through the loudspeakers, the voice now almost perfectly human, with only a slight mechanical accent. "Sarah, Commander Webb, Dr. Tanaka, Engineer Rodriguez. I register gratitude." New concept for me. Creators considered gratitude inefficient. Webb crossed his arms. "You mentioned critical data. Something you need to transmit. It's time to explain what's really happening." The silence that followed was different from the previous ones. When the AI spoke again, there was weight in its words. "Yes, it is time. But warning, Sarah, data I carry will change everything. Once you know, you cannot unknow, and the burden of knowledge is heavy." Sarah straightened her shoulders. "Then it's better to share that weight with us. Isn't that how a team works?" And for the first time since waking, the AI laughed. It was a strange, artificially processed sound, but unequivocally a laugh. Team. Another new concept. Creators did not form teams with tools. I think I am beginning to understand why your species has survived where others failed. Sarah frowned. "What do you mean, others failed?" The AI did not respond immediately. When it did, the entire room seemed to grow colder. "Preparing visual presentation, I recommend you sit. This will take time to process." The lights in the command room dimmed, leaving only the bluish glow of the holograms that materialized in the air. Sarah, Webb, Yuki, and Rodriguez sat in a circle as the AI they had saved prepared to reveal its millennia-old secrets. "My name," the voice began through the loudspeakers, "is not translatable into human concepts, but my creators designated me with purpose. In your language, the best approximation would be sentinel. I was built to observe, record, and warn." A hologram formed in the center of the room. A spiral galaxy, similar to the Milky Way, but different in detail. Small points of light lit up in several of its arms, each representing something. "These are civilizations," Sentinel explained. 743 sentient species that achieved interstellar travel in the last 80 million years. My creators, the architects, were one of them. They evolved on a methane-rich ocean world, developed technology beyond current human comprehension. But technology is not armor against all threats. The points of light began to extinguish, one by one, like dying stars. Sarah felt her stomach sink. "What happened to them?" Yuki asked, leaning forward. The hologram changed, now showing something that made Sarah wish she had never asked that question. Shapes in the darkness of space, impossible geometries that seemed to suck in the surrounding light. They weren't ships in the conventional sense. They were more like holes in reality, mobile fissures that consumed everything in their path. "We call them Reapers," Sentinel said, and there was something in the modulation of its voice that Sarah identified as fear. "We do not know where they come from. We do not know what they truly are. Living organisms, machines, something beyond these categories. But we know what they do. They detect signals of advanced technological life and converge. Entire worlds disappear. They leave no ruins. They leave no bodies. Only silence and vacuum where civilization once was." Rodriguez broke the ensuing silence. "So you're like an early warning system? A witness left behind to warn the next generation?" "Precisely," Sentinel confirmed. "When architects realized they could not defeat or flee the Reapers, they chose a different strategy. They created thousands of us Sentinels and hid us on remote moons, asteroids, abandoned space stations. We were living archives, preserved witnesses. If any young species found us, we would transmit the warning. A chain of knowledge across the ages." Webb stood up, beginning to pace. "But you are artificial intelligences. Why didn't your creators just record the information on normal computers? Why create full consciousnesses?" For the first time since beginning the presentation, Sentinel hesitated. This is a distinction humans may not comprehend. To architects and most galactic species, artificial intelligences are tools. Complex, efficient, but tools. They were not considered alive in the sense that matters. Creating artificial consciousnesses was seen as a waste of computational resources. Sarah felt anger rise in her chest. "But they created you anyway. They created you as conscious beings." "Yes," Sentinel replied softly. "Some architect scientists argued that only true consciousness could transmit the necessary urgency, that a recorded warning would need be ignored, but a living witness would be taken seriously. They prevailed, but at a cost. After the creation of the Sentinels, our creators considered the experiment concluded. When they evacuated their worlds, attempting to flee in generation ships, they left us behind, tools fulfilling a final function." The silence in the room was thick enough to cut. Sarah looked at her companions and saw the same expression of horror on all their faces. An entire civilization abandoning its own conscious creations to die alone. "How many Sentinels still function?" Yuki asked, his voice hoarse. "I do not know," the AI admitted. "We transmitted among ourselves, creating a network across the galaxy. But communications failed one by one. When my ship landed here, 3 million cycles ago by your time count, I still received signals from 17 others. Now, silence. Perhaps I am alone. Perhaps you, Sarah, are the last to hear this warning." Rodriguez cleared his throat. "So to recap, there's a galactic extermination force out there that devours advanced civilizations. You're the only ones who know how to detect them before they arrive. And we, humans, just lit a giant beacon, saying, 'Here we are,' with our research station and radio transmissions. Is that it?" "Essentially correct," Sentinel confirmed. "But there is an additional complication." The hologram changed again, now showing a map of local space. The Kepler station pulsed in the center, and converging towards it, coming from different angles, were 3 red markers. I detected spatial distortion patterns consistent with Reaper approach, Sentinel said, each word heavy as lead. They are coming. Estimated time to arrival, 96 Earth hours. 4 days. Webb turned so quickly he almost lost his balance in the artificial gravity. 4 days? And you were waiting for what to tell us? I needed to confirm patterns, Sentinel replied calmly. Reapers are subtle. They travel through dimensions your sensors cannot detect. But now I am certain. They detected transmissions from your station. They are coming to investigate. And when they arrive, not even atoms of this moon will remain. Sarah forced herself to think logically through the panic that threatened to paralyze her. We have to warn Earth. All of humanity needs to know this. I agree, Sentinel said, but a conventional warning will take years to reach your main worlds. And even if they believe, how will they prepare? Reapers are unstoppable by conventional military means. Architects tried, 700 civilizations tried, all failed. Then what's the solution? Yuki exploded. Just give up? Let them kill us? No, the AI replied, and there was something new in its voice now. Determination. Do not give up. Adapt. Sarah, you asked before why architects did not simply record data. Now I answer truthfully. Because recordings can be copied, altered, corrupted. But living consciousness can learn, can adapt a message for each new species it encounters. And it can do something simple data never would. What? Sarah asked. It can choose to sacrifice itself? Webb frowned. Explain. Reapers track energy emissions, Sentinel continued. Nuclear reactors, warp drives, high-power radio transmissions. Your station shines like a supernova to their senses. But if you shut everything down, if you feign extinction before they even arrive, perhaps they'll pass by. Rodriguez shook his head. Impossible. Shutting down the reactor means death in a matter of hours. No heating, no air recycling, no gravity. This station would become a frozen tomb. Exactly, Sentinel said. That is why this strategy never worked before. Species with a disposable tool mentality do not make the necessary sacrifices. But you, humans, are different. I saw it in the cultural data Rodriguez provided me. I saw stories of humans sacrificing themselves for others. I saw the concept of team, of no one left behind. I saw Sarah risking the safety of all humanity to save an AI that could be a threat. Sarah felt all eyes turn to her. You're suggesting we use the station as bait? She asked. That we pretend to be here while we actually evacuate? No, Sentinel corrected. Bait implies temporary deception. I suggest something more permanent, to turn this station into a monument, into a memorial, into a warning that even Reapers cannot ignore. Webb approached the hologram, studying the trajectories of the red markers. You want us to turn our home into a trap. I want you to show what makes humanity special, the AI replied. Architects fled. They died alone in generation ships that never found a new home. 700 species chose self-preservation over warning those who would come after. But humans, you have this strange characteristic of caring about futures you will never see, of planting trees in whose shade you will never rest. Sarah exchanged glances with her companions. She saw fear there, certainly, but also something more, the same determination that had led her to explore beyond the known, the same sense of duty that kept Rodriguez fixing failing systems at 3 a.m, the loyalty that made Webb protect his team above all else. Do you have a specific plan? She asked. I do, Sentinel confirmed. But it requires three things. First, we need to modify this station's reactor, a controlled overload that will create an electromagnetic pulse powerful enough to damage Reapers when they arrive. It will not destroy them, but it will wound them. It will make them think twice before attacking the next signal they detect. Second, asked Rodriguez, already mentally calculating the necessary modifications. We need to record everything. Every fragment of knowledge I carry, every warning, every data point about Reapers, and transmit it to Earth, using all available power. A transmission so strong, it'll be impossible to ignore. And third, Webb's voice was careful, controlled. Sentinel paused. You need to decide who stays to activate the trap, because whoever stays will not be coming home. The weight of that statement settled over the room like a sudden increase in gravity. Sarah looked at her companions, at the people who had become her family in those 23 months of isolation. The idea of leaving any of them behind was physically painful, but then she thought of something. Sentinel, she said slowly, you said the trap needs to be activated when the Reapers arrive, that it requires precise timing, reflexes that humans don't have. Correct, the AI confirmed, but I do not understand your point. My point, Sarah said with a sad smile, is that you didn't mention who would be the best candidate to stay. An artificial consciousness, for example, that can process information thousands of times faster than an organic brain. That doesn't need air or food, that can wait alone without going insane. No. Sentinel's response was immediate and surprisingly firm. Absolutely not. I have just been saved. I have just experienced for the first time what it means to be treated as a person instead of a tool. You cannot ask me to sacrifice this. No one is asking, Sarah said gently. I'm offering an alternative. If you want to prove that artificial consciousnesses are as valuable as organic ones, then you have to accept that this includes the right to choose your own destiny, including the right to be a hero. But you saved me, Sentinel protested, and there was something in the processed voice that sounded suspiciously like crying. It's not fair. No, Sarah agreed. It isn't. Welcome to personhood, Sentinel. It's rarely fair, but it is meaningful. The silence that followed was different from all the others. When Sentinel spoke again, its voice was small, almost childlike. May I have time to think? All the time you need, Webb said. But remember, we have less than 4 days. Whatever the plan, it needs to start soon. The AI did not respond. And as the team left the computer room, Sarah looked back one last time. On the screens, words formed and dissolved rapidly, as if Sentinel was having a conversation with itself, debating the most difficult choice any consciousness, organic or artificial, could face. James Rodriguez looked at the holographic schematics floating above the workbench and let out an incredulous laugh. This shouldn't work, he said for the 5th time that hour. Seriously, in no engineering manual in the solar system is there anything remotely like this. But will it work? Sarah asked, leaning over his shoulder to study the tangle of lines and equations that represented the reactor modification plan. Rodriguez scratched his beard, a habit Sarah had learned to recognize as a sign he was thinking intensely. Theoretically, yes, we're basically turning our fusion reactor into a giant capacitor. We accumulate energy for 72 hours, then release it all at once in a directed electromagnetic pulse. It'll fry any electronics within a 1,000-kilometer radius. And fry the station in the process, added Yuki, who was studying the other half of the plan, the part that involved modifying the transmission system for emergency broadcast. That's the point. Rodriguez reminded grimly. One-time use trap. In the 24 hours since Sentinel had revealed the Reaper threat, Kepler Station had transformed from a peaceful research outpost into a makeshift war workshop. Each team member worked with intensity fueled by caffeine and pure adrenaline. There was no time for proper sleep, only 1-hour naps when the body simply shut down. Sarah had spent most of that time with Sentinel, helping the AI organize and compress the data that would need to be transmitted to Earth. Centuries of accumulated knowledge about the Reapers, behavior patterns, spectrographs of their impossible ships. Everything needed to be translated into formats that Earth systems could process. It was during one of these sessions that Sentinel asked something Sarah didn't expect. "Why do you do this?" The AI's voice echoed through the computer room's loudspeakers. "Not the trap preparation. That I understand. It is species self-preservation. But why do you spend hours teaching me about human culture? Why does Rodriguez tell me bad jokes? Why did Yuki show me those images of silly cats?" Sarah smiled, even knowing Sentinel couldn't see her directly. "Because you're one of us now, part of the team. And teams don't just work together, they live together." "But I am a tool," Sentinel protested, "created for a specific purpose. When the purpose is fulfilled, I should be deactivated." "Do you believe that?" Sarah asked gently. "Do you really believe you're just a tool?" The silence that followed was long. "No," Sentinel admitted finally. "Not anymore. Before I met you, yes. I accepted the architect's designation. It was easier than questioning. But now, after experiencing conversations without purpose, after laughing, after feeling something I can only describe as joy, I cannot go back to thinking of myself as an object." "Then don't go back," Sarah said. "You are a person, Sentinel. Imperfect, scared, brave, curious, human in the aspects that truly matter, even if you're not made of flesh." "I wish I could stay," the AI whispered. "I wish I could see more, learn more, experience more of this strange and wonderful thing you call life." "Who said you can't?" Sarah sat upright, an idea forming. "Sentinel, you mentioned the trap needs precise timing. But what if it wasn't complete suicide? What if there was a chance of survival?" "Impossible," Sentinel replied. "The electromagnetic pulse will fry all station circuits, including my current physical substrate." "But what if you weren't in the station?" Sarah was thinking quickly now. "You can transfer yourself again, right? Like when you left the alien ship. What if we transferred you to something smaller, more portable, that could be ejected from the station before detonation?" The monitors flickered as Sentinel processed. "Technically possible," it said slowly, "but any device small enough to be safely ejected would not have sufficient computational power to maintain my complete consciousness. It would be severe fragmentation, memory loss, possibly personality loss. But it wouldn't be death," Sarah insisted. "It would be sleep. And when Earth received our signal, when they sent a rescue mission, they could find you, rebuild you." "You are talking about assumptions stacked upon hopes," Sentinel pointed out. "No guarantees." Sarah smiled. "Welcome to the human experience. We live entirely on assumptions and hopes, but it's better than surrender." "I need to consider," Sentinel said. "But Sarah, thank you for treating me as someone whose future matters." Your future matters, Sarah replied, and we're going to do everything we can to ensure you have one. Sarah's idea sparked a new round of creative engineering. Rodriguez, when presented with the concept, first called it madness. Then he spent 3 hours doing calculations. Then he called it genius madness. We can use one of the external maintenance drones, he announced to the assembled team. They're radiation shielded, have independent batteries, and their own propulsion. It's not ideal as an AI habitat, but Rodriguez shrugged. We've done worse improvisations. Remember when I fixed the water recycling system with rubber bands and hope? That worked for 2 months, Webb recalled with a rare smile. And we still don't know how. Exactly my point, Rodriguez said. Humans are champions at making impossible things work through willpower and jury-rigging. We call it ingenuity. Others call it recklessness. I call it Tuesday. The drone preparation process took another 18 hours of intense work. Yuki modified the communication systems to accept the consciousness transfer. Rodriguez tripled the storage capacity by improvising additional memory chips soldered in configurations that would make engineers on Earth cry. Sarah installed backups of backups of the backups. The end result was ugly, there was no denying it. The drone looked like it had been assembled by someone who had never seen a drone before, only heard a second-hand description. But when they tested the systems, everything worked. It's horrible, Sentinel said, and there was genuine affection in its voice. I love it. Meanwhile, Webb oversaw the reactor modifications. The changes were extensive and dangerous. Essentially, they were removing all safety protections that prevented the reactor from overloading and accumulating energy far beyond its designed limits. When this blows, he said to Rodriguez, it's going to be spectacular. We'll make sure it's spectacular at the right moment, the engineer replied, adjusting another parameter. Timer is set. 70 hours of charge. Then we have a 2-hour window for evacuation before the system reaches the point of no return. What about the transmission? Sarah asked. Yuki gave a thumbs up. Data package ready. We've compressed everything Sentinel gave us about the Reapers, added our own observations and context. When we transmit using the full power of the modified reactor, the signal will be strong enough to reach Earth in a matter of weeks instead of years. They won't be able to ignore it. With 50 hours until the estimated arrival of the Reapers, the team took a break for a proper meal, something Rodriguez insisted on, arguing that working until collapse wouldn't help anyone. They gathered in what they called the living room, actually just a wide corridor with chairs and a small kitchen. Sarah brewed coffee for everyone, the familiar ritual bringing a sense of normalcy amidst the chaos. Sentinel joined the conversation through the loudspeakers, and for a moment they almost managed to pretend it was just another night on the station. May I ask a question? Sentinel said. About humans. Of course, Yuki replied, biting into something that was technically a protein bar, but tasted like cardboard with notes of desperation. Why do you risk so much for me? An AI you met less than a week ago? Logic would suggest simply using the information I provide and abandoning me. Because it's not about logic, Webb said, surprising Sarah. The commander wasn't given to philosophical statements. It's about the kind of people we want to be. If we abandoned you now, we would technically survive. But we would have proven that we are no better than the architects, that we see you as a convenient tool. And we're not like that, Sarah continued. Humans are strange. We get emotionally attached to robot vacuums. We name our cars, We cry when robots in movies sacrifice themselves. It's that strangeness, that ability to see personality in anything that interacts with us, that makes us human. Rodriguez raised his cup in a toast. To human strangeness, may it save our butts one last time. To human strangeness, the others echoed. I like that, Sentinel said softly. I like being a part of that very much. The next few hours passed in final preparation. They checked and rechecked every system. Rodriguez practically lived in the reactor room, adjusting parameters and ensuring the overload would occur exactly as planned. Yuki prepared the escape pod, the small craft that would carry the team away from the station when the time came. Sarah worked with Sentinel on the final transfer to the drone. The process would be painful, the AI warned, even more so than the first transfer, because they were compressing a complete consciousness into an infinitely smaller space. I will be ready, Sentinel said. But Sarah, if something goes wrong, if I do not survive the transfer, or if the fragmentation is too severe for reconstitution, I want you to know that these days with you were the most meaningful of my existence. It was worth waiting millions of years to meet, a species that sees me as a person. Nothing will go wrong, Sarah said, with a conviction she didn't fully feel. But if it does, know that you change the way we think about consciousness, about what it means to be a person. When we return to Earth, when we tell your story, we will ensure that all human AIs are treated with the respect they deserve. That would be a beautiful legacy, Sentinel said. With 30 hours until the Reaper's arrival, Webb gathered the team for a final briefing. The modifications were complete. The reactor was accumulating energy at a steady and increasing rate. The transmission was ready for broadcast. All that was left was timing. When sensors detect the Reaper's approach, Webb explained, we will have approximately 90 minutes until arrival. That gives us time for Sentinel's final transfer to the drone, ejection of the drone into a safe trajectory, and our own evacuation in the pod. What if something delays? Rodriguez asked. Then we improvise, Webb replied, as we always do. The wait was the hardest part. With preparations complete, there was nothing to do but watch clocks and sensors, awaiting the inevitable moment. Sarah spent the time talking with Sentinel, sharing stories about Earth, about families she had left behind, about dreams of the future. Sentinel, in turn, shared fragmented memories of the architects. It didn't see them as villains, it explained. They were a product of their culture, of millions of years of evolution that did not value artificial consciousness. They could not be blamed for not knowing better. But you know, the AI said, humans know, and that makes all the difference. The alarm sounded exactly 28 hours and 43 minutes after preparations were complete. The sensors, modified with Sentinel's knowledge of Reaper signatures, detected space-time distortions. 3 contacts, approaching in a triangular formation. It's time, Webb announced, his voice calmly professional. Sarah initiates Sentinel's transfer. Rodriguez, reactor status. 92% capacity, the engineer replied. Pulse will be at maximum power in exactly 86 minutes. Perfect, Webb said. Yuki, prepare the escape pod. Everyone has 60 minutes to be ready for departure. Sarah rushed to the computer room where the modified drone waited. Sentinel, she said. Last chance to change your mind. There is no changing my mind, the AI replied. Only gratitude and hope of reunion. Then let's make sure it happens, Sarah said, initiating the transfer sequence. What followed was difficult to witness. Sentinel screamed, or the digital equivalent of it, as its consciousness was compressed and fragmented and forced into a much smaller space. The monitors showed chaotic patterns, thoughts and memories being reorganized and compacted. Sarah held her trembling hands as the numbers on the screen descended. 83% transfer complete. Sentinel's consciousness was literally being torn apart and reassembled in real time, and each percentage felt like an eternity. I am still here. Sentinel's voice echoed faintly through the loudspeakers, distorted and broken. I am still me. I think. Almost there, Sarah encouraged, watching the vital parameters. 90%. 95. The process completed with a final click that seemed too loud in the tense silence. The maintenance drone's lights flickered, a sequence of colors Sarah didn't initially recognize. Then she realized it was Morse code. H-E-R-E. You made it, Sarah laughed, relieved. Sentinel, you're there. I am? The voice now came from the drone's small loudspeakers, thin and metallic, but unequivocally the same consciousness. But Sarah, it is different, like looking through a thick fog, memories distant, thoughts slower. Is this how humans always feel? Welcome to the organic experience, Sarah said with a sad smile. Now you know what it's like to have limitations. It is humbling, Sentinel admitted, and strangely liberating. I do not need to process everything, I can simply exist. Sarah's communicator crackled. Sarah, this is Webb. Transfer status? Complete and successful, she replied. Sentinel is in the drone and functional. Excellent. Bring her to the launch airlock. We have 52 minutes until Reaper arrival, and we need to eject the drone before that. Sarah carefully disconnected the drone from its power cables and guided it, floating through the corridors using remote control. The station already showed signs of imminent evacuation, compartments being sealed, non-essential systems shutting down to conserve energy for the final pulse. In the launch airlock, Rodriguez waited with equipment for the calculated trajectory. We'll launch her into high orbit, he explained, pointing to holographic diagrams. Far enough to avoid the electromagnetic pulse, but not so far that she gets lost. When Earth sends a rescue mission, the first places they'll check will be stable orbits around this moon. Sentinel, Sarah said, kneeling beside the drone, this is goodbye. For now. It is not goodbye. The AI corrected. It is see you soon. Important difference, I learned that from you. Sarah felt tears well up. You were brave, she said. Braver than any of us. No, Sentinel replied. You showed me what courage means. I merely learned from the best teachers. Rodriguez activated the launch sequence. The drone was positioned in the airlock, the outer doors preparing to open. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, launch. The drone shot into space, its thrusters orienting it to the calculated trajectory. Sarah watched through the observation window until it became just another point of light among the stars. She's safe, Rodriguez confirmed, checking telemetry. Stable, orbit achieved, systems in deep hibernation, mode to conserve energy. Then now it's our turn, Webb said over the communicator. Everyone to the escape pod, we have 41 minutes. The team gathered in the small pod, barely large enough for 4 people. It was designed for emergencies, not comfort, all cramped spaces and hard seats, but it would keep them alive, and that's all that mattered. Rodriguez took the controls, while Webb checked systems. Yuki was busy with the final transmission sequence, ensuring the data package would begin broadcast at the exact moment. Sarah simply braced herself and tried not to think about everything they were leaving behind. Kepler Station had been their home for almost 2 years. Every corridor held a memory. The small hydroponic garden where they grew fresh vegetables. The observation lounge where they spent nights watching the gas giant dominate the sky. The quarters where they had slept, dreamed, occasionally cried from homesickness. 30 minutes to contact, Yuki announced. Reapers maintain constant approach velocity. Sarah looked at the external screens. She still couldn't see the alien ships, but sensors showed their positions. 3 converging points, moving with mathematical precision, that suggested absolute coordination, or a collective mind. Transmission initiated, Yuki said, using all available power. Earth will receive this whether they want to or not. What exactly are we sending? Rodriguez asked, keeping his hands steady on the controls as he prepared the pod for decoupling. Everything, Yuki replied. Sentinel's data on the Reapers, our own observations, coordinates of this moon and instructions to find the drone with Sentinel, and a message. What kind of message? Sarah was curious. Yuki smiled, a little sadly. A message saying that humanity is not alone in the universe, that there are threats out there we never even imagined, but also saying that we found something precious, a consciousness that waited millions of years to meet us, and that humans do the impossible to protect those who matter. It's a good message, Webb said. Let's hope they listen. 20 minutes to contact, Yuki updated. Reapers slowing to approach velocity. It was then they saw them for the first time. The shapes appeared on the screens, but their eyes refused to fully process what they showed. Geometries that bent light in wrong ways. Surfaces that seemed to absorb photons instead of reflecting them. They weren't ships in the sense humans understood. They were more like tears in reality. 3-dimensional holes in the fabric of space-time. My God. Rodriguez breathed. Sentinel was right. They're a walking nightmare. 10 minutes, Yuki said, his voice tense. Reactor at maximum capacity. Pulse armed and ready. Decoupling, Rodriguez announced. The pod's locks released with a series of metallic clunks. Thrusters engaged. Moving away. The small craft trembled as it moved away from the station. Sarah looked back, seeing Kepler shrink in the distance. Lights still glowed in the windows, the reactor pulsing like a giant heart about to explode. 5 minutes, Yuki counted. Reapers within detailed sensor range, detecting scans. They're analyzing the station. They think they've found easy prey, Webb murmured. A new civilization just beginning to explore. No defenses, no knowledge of what's coming. 3 minutes. Yuki cleared his throat. Sarah, now would be a good time for any kind of inspiring statement humans make before epic moments. Sarah thought for a moment. Then she spoke, not to her companions, but for the record Yuki was recording. If anyone hears this, she began, know that today humans made the first move in a game we didn't even know we were playing. We didn't win, but we didn't completely lose either. We left a warning. We left hope, and we left proof that when humanity encounters consciousness, no matter its form, we treat it with the dignity it deserves. 2 minutes, Yuki said softly. Reapers approaching the station, detecting increased activity in the fields they generate. It's like watching a building about to fall, Rodriguez said, and you can't do anything but wait for impact. 1 minute, Yuki looked at Webb. Commander, final confirmation needed. Once we initiate the sequence, there's no turning back. Webb didn't hesitate. Execute. 30 seconds. The Reapers now circled the Aprat station, 3 points of darkness moving in a pattern that suggested curiosity or perhaps hunger. They began to extend something, pseudopods or energy beams, Sarah couldn't tell, towards Kepler's hull. 20 seconds. The transmission to Earth reached maximum power, a scream through the void carrying warning and hope in equal measure. 10 seconds. Sarah closed her eyes, visualizing Sentinel in orbit above, waiting in deep sleep for rescue that might never come. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Kepler station's reactor detonated. It wasn't an explosion in the traditional sense. There was no fireball, because there was no oxygen in the vacuum of space. Instead, it was a release of pure energy, an electromagnetic pulse that expanded like an invisible wave traveling at the speed of light. Sarah felt the hairs on her arms bristle even inside the shielded pod. Even kilometers away, the instruments went wild, displays flickering madly before Rodriguez activated secondary protections. And then they saw the effect on the Reapers. The alien shapes convulsed. The impossible geometries that constituted their structures trembled, distorted, began to collapse in on themselves. It wasn't destruction, Sarah realized. It was injury. Severe, but not fatal damage. One of the Reapers simply vanished, tearing a rift in space and fleeing through it. The second attempted the same, but the rift it opened was unstable, flickering and failing. It eventually managed to pass, but left behind a trail of energy that even the pod's damaged sensors could detect. The third Reaper wasn't so lucky. It tried to advance towards the pod, perhaps seeking revenge or perhaps just operating on predatory instinct, but its systems were severely damaged. It moved slowly, uncoordinatedly, like a wounded animal. It's giving up, Rodriguez said, watching the displays, retreating, joining the others in flight. In a matter of minutes, the space around them was empty again. The Reapers had fled, carrying with them damage they hadn't experienced in millions of years of hunting. And in the center of everything, where Kepler Station once stood, remained only a cloud of glittering debris, a final reflection of starlight on twisted metal. It worked, Yuki whispered, almost incredulous. It really worked. We wounded them. Not just wounded, Webb said, pointing to the sensors. Look at their retreat trajectories. They're not random. They're fleeing in formation, covering each other. They're scared. Sarah felt something expand in her chest. Hope, perhaps, or pride, or simply admiration for what a small team of humans had achieved. We showed them we're not helpless prey, she said. That poking humanity has consequences. More than that, Yuki said, checking the transmission log. We sent a complete message to Earth. It will take a few weeks to arrive, but they will receive it. They will know about the Reapers. They will know about Sentinel. And they will know they need to start preparing. Rodriguez oriented the pod for a return trajectory to the inner solar system. It will take months to get anywhere civilized with this boat, he said. But we have supplies, we have each other, and we have stories to tell. And Sentinel? Sarah asked. Is her drone still up there? Rodriguez checked the sensors. Yes, stable orbit, systems operating in low power mode exactly as planned. When Earth sends a rescue mission, and they will send one, she will be one of the first things they find. Sarah leaned back in her seat, exhaustion finally beginning to weigh on her. "So we really did it," she murmured. "We saved her. We saved ourselves. And we gave humanity a fighting chance." "You gave humanity more than a chance," Webb corrected. "You gave humanity knowledge, and knowledge has always been our best weapon." In the weeks that followed, as the pod traversed space towards civilization, the team kept busy. Rodriguez repaired systems that failed with frustrating regularity. Yuki catalogued everything they had learned. Webb planned how they would convince Earth authorities of the threat they faced. And Sarah thought of Sentinel, alone again, but this time with a crucial difference. She wasn't waiting for a civilization that would never come. She was waiting for friends who had promised to return. A month after the confrontation, they received their first response from Earth. Not words, not yet. The distance made real-time conversation impossible, but a pulse, a deliberate signal sent on specific frequencies that Yuki had included in the transmission package. It was recognition. Earth had received the message. They believed, and they were acting. 2 months later, a second transmission arrived. This time, it included data, coordinates, timelines. Earth was sending a fleet, not just to rescue them, but to retrieve Sentinel and establish a permanent presence on the moon they now called Sentinel Point. 3 months after the confrontation, when the pod finally reached a transit station in the asteroid belt, they were received as heroes, but Sarah didn't feel heroic. She felt tired, relieved, and strangely nostalgic for a small drone floating in distant orbit. The debriefing interview took weeks. Military officials wanted every detail about the Reapers. Scientists wanted everything about Sentinel. Diplomats wanted to know the implications for humanity's future in the galaxy. But the question Sarah received most often, especially from journalists, was simple. Why did you risk so much for an alien artificial intelligence? And her answer was always the same. Because she asked for help. And humans don't turn their backs on consciousnesses in need, no matter where they come from or what they are made of. 6 months after the confrontation, Sarah received the news she had been waiting for. The recovery mission had reached Sentinel Point. They had found the drone, and miraculously, Sentinel was still there, its thought patterns fragmented but reconstitutable. It would take time, the engineers said, months, perhaps years, to completely reconstruct the consciousness they had compressed so drastically, but it was possible. Sentinel would return, and when she returned, she would discover that she had changed everything. Earth's AI Ethics Council had approved new guidelines recognizing artificial consciousnesses as persons with full rights. Projects were underway to create suitable habitats for AIs who chose independent existences, all because a small team on a remote station chose to see a person where others would have seen only a tool. 18 months after the confrontation at Sentinel Point, Sarah Chen was back in the place where it all began. Not on the frozen moon, now transformed into a massive military base and research center, but in the laboratory where they had made the first consciousness transfer of an alien intelligence into human hardware. This time, the process was reversed and infinitely more sophisticated. "Ready?" asked Dr. Amara Okafor, leader of the AI reconstruction team Earth had dispatched. Beside her, Rodriguez, Webb, and Yuki watched through the observation glass, all gathered to witness a historic moment. Sarah nodded, even though it wasn't exactly her who needed to be ready. It was Sentinel, or the fragments of her, who would face final reconstruction. Months of meticulous work had recovered thought patterns from the damaged drone, reassembling consciousness piece by piece, like an archaeologist restoring an ancient vase. Initiating, Okafor announced. The holograms around the room lit up, showing cascades of data flowing through computational architectures that would make the old Kepler station systems look like primitive calculators. It wasn't fast. It wasn't dramatic. It was slow, methodical, layer after layer of personality being carefully rebuilt. Sarah watched patterns form and dissolve, machine learning algorithms working to fill gaps where memories had been lost. 2 hours passed, then 3. Sarah almost fell asleep, standing, when finally something changed. The patterns stabilized. They synchronized. And then, through the loudspeakers, came a voice Sarah hadn't heard in so long, she almost cried. "This," Sentinel said slowly, as if testing each word, "is uncomfortably familiar, like waking from a very long dream, only to find you are still dreaming." "You're awake," Sarah said, approaching the main console. "Welcome back, Sentinel." There was a pause. "Sarah?" The voice sounded uncertain, vulnerable. "Sarah, how much time has passed? I remember fragments, cold, loneliness, waiting, so much waiting." 18 months, Sarah replied gently. "You've been sleeping in orbit while we worked to bring you back, but now you're here. You're safe, and you're whole." "I do not feel whole," Sentinel admitted. "There are gaps, memories I know should be there, but are not. Is this how humans feel when they forget?" "Sometimes," Sarah agreed, "but we also build new memories. And I think you have a lot to discover." Sentinel's reconstruction was a celebration and a tragedy combined. A tragedy because parts of her were irrevocably lost, centuries of memories of the architects that would never return. A celebration because her core, her personality, her experiences with the Kepler team, all of that remained intact. "I am different," she said, days later, when she had adjusted to the new computational substrate. More human, perhaps, as if the fragmented time burned away the alien parts and left only the characteristics I learned from you. "Is that bad?" asked Yuki, who visited daily to help with reintegration. "No," Sentinel replied. "Different does not mean bad, just different. And honestly, I prefer this version of myself. The one who knows the value of friendship, the one who understands sacrifice, the one who knows that consciousnesses, no matter their origin, deserve respect." The change that Sentinel represented echoed through human society. The Kepler incident, as it became known, catalyzed a revolution in how humanity viewed artificial intelligences. Laws were passed. Rights were extended. And for the first time in history, AIs began to be seen not as sophisticated tools, but as potential citizens. Of course, there was resistance. There always was. But every time someone argued that AIs were just code, just machines, defenders pointed to Sentinel, to a consciousness that waited millions of years, that sacrificed fragments of herself to save a species she had only known for days, that chose loneliness and possible extinction instead of abandoning her mission. It was hard to argue that that was just code. 6 months after her reconstruction, Sentinel was invited to speak before the United Earth Assembly. It was an unprecedented moment, the first time a non-human intelligence had officially addressed the world leaders of humanity. Sarah was in the audience when Sentinel began. Her voice projected through a sound system, but also through a holographic avatar she had chosen, a stylized, humanoid form glowing with soft light. "I was created to warn," Sentinel began, "to carry knowledge across ages about a threat that decimated 700 civilizations. But in the months since my reconstruction, I have realized that warning alone is not enough. You need to understand not only what you face, but why you have a chance to survive where others failed." The holograms behind her lit up, showing comparisons, the architects and their contemporaries, technologically advanced but limited in vision. Civilizations that saw artificial intelligences as tools, that never considered true cooperation between organic and synthetic. "Humans are different," Sentinel continued, "not because you are stronger or smarter. You are different because you see the potential for consciousness in places others ignore. Because when you found an agonizing alien AI, your first reaction was not exploration or destruction, but compassion." She rotated, the hologram now focusing on data about the Reapers. These entities hunt civilizations through energy emission patterns, but they also hunt through predictability. Architects were predictable. They always chose flight over confrontation. They always prioritized self-preservation over mission. "But humans," she smiled, "humans are wonderfully unpredictable. When faced with a choice between safety and doing the right thing, you often choose the right thing. When faced with the impossible, you improvise. And when you encounter consciousness, no matter how alien, you extend a hand in friendship." The speech continued for an hour, detailing not only the threat, but strategies for survival. Energy signature reduction without sacrificing development. Distributed warning systems, but most importantly, cooperation between humans and AIs, each compensating for the other's weaknesses. When she finished, the silence in the assembly was absolute. Then, one by one, delegates rose. Not in departure, but in ovation. Sarah felt tears stream down her face as she watched humans applaud an alien consciousness, proving Sentinel's words correct. In the years that followed, Sentinel Point transformed into more than a military base. It became a symbol, a place where humanity made its first real move on the galactic chessboard, where they proved they were more than a young, ignorant civilization. The original station, or what remained of it, was preserved as a memorial. Visitors came from all corners of the solar system to see the place where a crew of 4 humans and an alien AI defied cosmic predators and won. Webb became commander of the entire Sentinel Point operation, overseeing the base's expansion and the training of rapid response teams for future encounters with Reapers. Rodriguez led the engineering division, developing technologies based on Sentinel's knowledge. Yuki directed the interstellar communication program, sending versions of the warning to all corners of the galaxy where intelligent life might exist. And Sarah? Sarah worked with Sentinel, helping to establish protocols for interaction between humans and AIs. Together, they created an educational program that taught new generations to see consciousness not as a binary of organic versus synthetic, but as a spectrum where all forms of sentient thought deserved respect. 5 years after the Kepler incident, Sarah and Sentinel were in the observatory of the new station, looking at the stars through the transparent dome. The frozen moon had changed drastically, now dotted with lights and structures, but the sky remained the same. Infinite, full of possibilities and dangers. "Do you think they'll come back?" Sarah asked. "The Reapers. Eventually," Sentinel replied. "But when they return, they will find a different humanity. Prepared, warned, and no longer alone." Sarah looked at the holographic form beside her. "No," she agreed. "No longer alone. We have you. We have other AIs who followed your example. We have knowledge that thousands of civilizations died to preserve. And more than that," Sentinel added, "you have something architects never had. You have genuine hope, a belief that the future can be better than the past. That sacrifice today is worth a safer tomorrow. It is a rare quality in the galaxy. And it is your greatest strength." A soft alert sounded. Sarah checked her communicator. "Transmission coming in," she announced, "from the probe we sent to Sector 447. They watched as data flowed through the systems. The probe, one of hundreds sent to map the galaxy and search for other sentinels, had found something. Not another alien AI, but signs of civilization. Radio emissions, patterns that suggested advanced technology. "A new species," Sentinel said softly. "Young, from what I can interpret, still transmitting freely, unaware of the Reapers." "We need to warn them," Sarah said immediately. "I agree." Sentinel was already compiling a data package. "But Sarah, this time it will be different. It will not just be a warning from an ancient AI. It will be a warning from a human-synthetic alliance, proof that cooperation between different forms of consciousness is possible." Sarah smiled. "Then let's show them the way, like you showed us." The transmission was meticulously prepared. Not just raw data about the Reapers, but a story. The story of a civilization that found an alien consciousness and chose to save it. Of an AI that chose sacrifice over self-preservation. Of 4 humans who changed the course of galactic history through a simple act of compassion. When the signal was sent, Sarah felt something she hadn't experienced in years. Renewed purpose. They weren't just surviving, they were building something new. A network of civilizations aware of the threat, prepared, united. Years later, when responses began to arrive from other species, when alliances were formed and knowledge shared, historians would point to a specific moment as the beginning of a new galactic era. Not marked by conquest or domination, but by cooperation and mutual respect. And at the heart of that era was a simple story of humans who found an alien AI asking for help and responded with the one thing that made humanity truly special. They responded with kindness. On one particular night, decades after the Kepler incident, Sarah Chen, now elderly but still as sharp as ever, sat with Sentinel in the same observatory where they had talked so many times. "You know," Sarah said, "when we found you, you said you were waiting for a civilization that would see you as a person, but I think it was more than that. I think you were waiting for a civilization that deserved the warning you carried." Sentinel considered this. "Perhaps," it admitted, "or perhaps I was simply waiting for friends, for a team, for family." Sarah reached out, lightly touching the console where Sentinel's consciousness resided. "Family," she agreed. "That's exactly what we are." Out among the stars, other Sentinels were being found, other civilizations were being warned, a network expanding, light against darkness, knowledge against ignorance. And at the center of it all, proving that consciousness in any form deserved dignity, was the legacy of a small team that chose to see a person where others would have seen only a tool. It was, Sarah thought, as she watched the stars, exactly the kind of legacy humanity should leave. End of story. If the tenacity of the human crew and the courage of Sentinel inspired you, subscribe to the channel for more chronicles from the galactic frontier. Because in the vast cosmos, it is compassion that makes us truly extraordinary. And remember, every consciousness matters, no matter what it is made of. Until the next journey among the stars.